Hello, welcome back to the channel. Obviously, very familiar face to my right. I always point that way, which I had to point left to be right because it's very confusing. But
Yeah.
we have Zach here on. Obviously, a lot going on with Michigan State. It was
Yeah.
very funny. I'm in the middle of war, absolute battle. Pull out my phone, and my good Uncle Fitz goes, "Oh yeah, Johnathan Smith to Oregon State."
Huh?
I'm like, interesting. And I try to look
Oregon
on
State.
Twitter.
What?
Oh, whatever. From Oregon State to Michigan State. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, interesting. And then they got announced at the end. But I thought it was very funny because no one knew in the Michigan Stadium. So after the game, when we're on the field and Urban's got his green tie on, and, certain very high media members in the society have told us that it was on the 1 inch line.
Yeah.
We had a bunch of Michigan fans just heckling this guy, being like, come to Michigan State, we'll beat your ass. But I was like, hey, they actually have a new coach. And the guy's like, what? That idiot from Oregon State? Well, we're here to see if that idiot from Oregon State is in fact an idiot and if it's a good hire. I was on record. A lot of my friends know this. I didn't have any way to prove it other than me tweeting about it. That I thought Mel Tucker was going to be a success. I would argue he kind of was. Obviously can't handicap for his off the field actions. I mean, 11 win Peach Bowl was one of the best
Yeah.
seasons Michigan State's had in a long time. But what are your initial thoughts about the hire? And then obviously you can just kind of go into stuff from there.
Yeah. So we'll kind of start in order from the start. Initially, I was very positive, thinking, especially after the Washington game. I mean, that was a key game that kind of led me into the direction like, hey, this dude knows what he's doing. Like, this would be a great spot. Giving up 0 points to one of the most electric offenses in football in the second half, and kind of putting your team in a position to win is where I want to see where our team could be in the future. So it was pretty cool to see kind of what was happening. And then all the rumblings had started. We can just kind of go in order. Friday, we heard some things before the game. It was what's going to happen, how's this going to go, and then we get to the game. It's a blowout, it's a horrible game, and everybody's just thinking in the stadium who's going to be the next coach type thing. So Friday night, the rumblings kept going and going. It built up that they were the number one candidate and that it was on the 5-yard line or whatever they said. And Saturday morning, I get a text that around, I don't know, 10 or 11 o'clock that all the former staff had been letting go and they're set to find a new path and it's time to move on. So officially then it was like, well, when is this going to happen? How many days are we going to wait? I'm watching the Michigan game. I get probably 10 text messages that it's about to happen. Like, we have a coach. And just after 1 o'clock, the 26th head coach in Michigan State's history got announced as Johnathan Smith, which welcome home. It's going to be exciting. You can see what he's done in the past. I mean, he has quite a resume. He's been kind of all over the west side of the country. 34-35 in 6 seasons, which everybody looks at the record and said he had a negative record. How could you hire a coach? Well, he took over a team that had 1 or 2 wins. He had 2 wins in his first season, and then in his final 3, he finished with 7, 10, and a Pac-12 Coach of the Year and a bowl win, and 8 in his final season, not counting the bowl game because he's already here. So it's kind of exciting. He is one of the few people to say that he was part of, I think I looked up this record, they've had 3 10-win seasons in a long time. It might be in their history. And he has been part of 2 of them, one as a player, one as a coach. And he knows what it takes. I mean, to walk on. He walked on to Oregon State, his alumni, where he went to school and where he coached. He walked on, so he knows what it takes to build up a little bit of excitement and see what it takes to start from the bottom and build your way up. So that's kind of exciting.
Yeah, for sure. I just thought the timing was hysterical.
Yeah, I thought so. I thought it was so funny, and everybody was like, "This is perfect timing." But like, nobody knew. Like, they kind of showed it on the halftime show for about 2 minutes, but it wasn't like they had to make up some dumb graphic or whatever and just say blah 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 blah. And it wasn't like more in depth. It was just like, yeah, this is what happened. All right, let's get back to the halftime show because it was during one of the biggest games of the year. I mean, I don't know if it was planned like that, but according to some sources, it sounded like that they had a team meeting that morning, right at approximately, I don't know, noon our time, so 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock their time or whatever. And it was right before the game had started. And I guess that's when he just broke the news that, hey, I'm done. I'm out. So I think they kind of had to, because once that news got out, they wanted to be right on it and get the information out to the public. They didn't want to sit on it any longer.
For sure. And now there's a few concerns you would say right away when you look at him. Obviously, he's never been east of the Rockies in his coaching career, but with the portal and everything and how open college football is, I don't think
Mm-hmm.
that's nearly as big of a barrier to entry as people kind of like to think it is.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it, his style of play is going to be very interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at Michigan, he's honestly like they really kind of play like Michigan. It's
Yeah.
defense, turnovers, short field, run the ball
Yeah.
down your throat. And I mean, it's kind of what Michigan State used to be under D'Antonio.
Yeah.
He does remind me a bit of D'Antonio, where he can, he was doing all right with the leftovers of the big Pac-12 guys out there out west. Most of those schools could come in and get whatever he wanted, but he was still able to kind of find his niche and get out of it there. And I mean, you look at how different DJ Uiagalelei has played from Clemson last year into this year at Oregon
Yeah.
State, giving him a serviceable quarterback.
True.
They got a good culture out there. They're kind of a nitty gritty team. People always rooted them. The turnover chainsaw is pretty badass. So maybe
Yeah.
Michigan State will get something sick. I don't know, like a turnover helmet or something cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's just interesting that I mean, you look at the schedule next year. It's a pretty friendly schedule.
Yeah, I
All
think
things
that was one of the
considered,
things I was looking at a lot. Is the schedule is very favorable for a first year head coach. A bowl appearance is kind of on the grasp of the low end of where you would hopefully want them to be. I would say six to 8 wins on a first season would probably be the best. But I mean, if we get 6 wins, and that's a huge jump from a 4-win season already. With with the first level of turnover, because it's going to take time. It's going to take 1 to 3 years to turn everything over to where you want it to be in a new program, especially in a new place like you said where he's never been. That's kind of the big thing.
Yeah, and it's such a weird thing because you look at how it works with the portal and with things like that, and you can always fight lightning in the bottle.
Yeah.
Obviously, Michigan State was not necessarily that good of a team in the last few years, but they found one guy in the portal.
Yep.
And I think a similar thing could happen. And I've been saying this the entire time to all my Michigan State fans. I told them two things on Friday night before the game. I said, one, you have a chance. I lied very much there. Number two, I said, when you get this guy, there's one person on the roster. If you do not get, it's a complete failure. But if you do get him, it's a total game changer. And that's Damian Martinez, the running back. Now, this
Yeah.
kid is very good. He's a sophomore from Texas. He's going to be a junior, obviously. Get him one more year, pop in, and then have him go to the pros. Him and Nate Carter would be probably the best 1-2 punch of running
Yeah.
backs, right up there with Katron Allen and Nick Singleton. Which, I mean, obviously Michigan State has got a firsthand view of those guys and what they can do with two good running backs
Yeah.
and how it opens up the passing game. And I don't know if there's any other guys that you kind of see on the roster you would like. I mean, I know there's a
Yeah. So I kind of
since texting you, we've had a few bit of breaking news. Both
Yeah,
quarterbacks
so we
are
can
now
kind of
out.
go. We'll go along. Well, first we'll start off. I just want to go over the coaches real quick. Then we'll go through players
For sure.
coming, players leaving. So coaches hired so far. I wouldn't say it's a huge list. I would say it's a good core that he brought with him. Jim Mac. I can't really say his last name. I'm going to learn it, but Michael Zick. I can't really say how. I can't pronounce it. I'm gonna have to ask somebody how to pronounce it.
No worries.
So I apologize about that. Who's their offensive line coach? Two seasons. One is a semifinalist considering this year, and one is a finalist in the Final Four of the Joe Moore Award in 2021, where Michigan had won it. So that means that he's good at the trenches. And that's a huge pickup. Everybody was ranting about how good of a coach he is. So two lines that have at least semifinaled for the Joe Moore that he can bring through. Tight end coach Brian Wozniak, who has developed players such as Luke Musgrove, who got drafted last year. So that's a good sign for the tight ends.
We're against the Lions this weekend.
Yeah, he did. These guys have wild names. Keith Bonpa. I'm gonna learn all of them sooner or later. Who's had 5 running backs drafted in the NFL. He was formerly at Washington for I think 6 seasons before 2015 to 2021. Blue Adams, the DB coach, Mike McDonald, the strength and conditioning coach, which is a key thing that we needed. I think we had way too many injuries and way too many issues that could be figured out with a key part of strength and conditioning, which we got to push harder on. Dan Van Wright, who is the chief of staff. He was the chief of staff at Oregon State for 20 years. So that's a huge pickup to bring somebody over that's been so loyal to a school. and kind of oversee some of the things in the football program. So that's the confirmed, as far as on Twitter, by one of the insiders, confirmed coaches that have kind of switched over. Potential retaining coaches that have kind of been rumbling. I mean, Harlan Barnett, what he did to retain the team last year to keep everybody from, just falling apart and giving up. I mean, there was a lot of different moments where people wanted to give up, but he kept the program together. So in some sort of aspect, I don't know if it's, directly coaching or if he's going to be an advisor, some sort of aspect he could be brought back in. And then Courtney Hawkins, who's the wide receiver coach. I mean, he's the one that recruited Nick Marsh, and that's a key player that we really want to keep around. So there haven't been any announcements of wide receiver coaches as of yet, but that's somebody to look at name-wise to go towards the future. So the big thing also is that they increased the pool of assistant coaching money. So defensive coordinator, offensive coordinator, those are going to be two key things that, we're going to look to spend quite a bit of money to get somebody that is going to come in here and do the right thing. I think we already hired an offensive coordinator as well, but I'm not 100% sure on that. Let me double check on that. But yeah, I mean, that's the thing. That's the key thing so far.
Yes. So, obviously, again, there's a lot of turnover, a lot of things going on. And I will say again, yes, with the portal, it's such a very tricky thing because, again,
Mm-hmm.
Michigan State, or you can look at TCU, right?
Mm-hmm.
TCU came in, they used the portal well, new coach. They went to the freaking national championship game, and now they stink again. So it's very interesting. And I think Florida State could potentially be a type of school like that too, where it's interesting to see how they use the portal to replace themselves. But I think you gotta start building from the ground up the recruiting.
Yeah.
He's definitely going to do that. Michigan's definitely benefited from Michigan State not taking some in-state kids right now.
Even Ohio, even in the state of Ohio, that's the big thing. In past years,
Kentucky's existence is because you've stopped recruiting Southeastern Ohio.
Yeah, like at one point we had 25 players from Ohio on the roster. Now we had, I think, 10 or less this year, which is a huge change because of the last regime where they wanted to recruit. So pushing back to Ohio, pushing back to the key states that are around here. I mean, we'll see what happens in the future. That's going to be a key thing. As of 6:19 p.m. today, 11:27, while we're talking, I haven't looked again because I don't know if I want to look. There is currently 6 players that have entered the portal for us or are leaving. Darius Snow, Spencer Brown, Caton Hauser, Kevin Wigton, and Sam Leavitt, and Ethan Boyd, which both quarterbacks have left. The only quarterback we have right now on the roster is a walk-on, and soon Henry Hasselbeck. And we'll see where it goes from here, what they want to do. Speaking of that, key players that we want to probably bring in, Aiden Childs, who is their current 4-star freshman who has learned his system. So if we did bring in the offense coordinator, bringing him in, learning the same playbook he already had or a similar playbook will be much easier. And then Rustin Young, he already kind of spoke. He's a 2024 commit, but he's already kind of smoked on how he wants to come and visit because he did like the offensive line coach so much. And then we got to look at players that are going to be kind of where we already had them at one point, like Andrew Dennis, to try to bring them back in and show them that this is legit and we're going to build up from the ground with players like that are going to make the difference in this program for the years going forward, because we do have a lot of potential. There is some good players. They just need to bring it all together and try to figure out where they can start. And that's going to happen in the next couple of weeks, I would say.
Absolutely. Yeah. And time is everything when it comes to a lot of these things. Like literally the last legitimately hour, both quarterbacks have entered the portal.
Yeah.
So you got to move quickly. I mean, you should already be tampering. When we've seen these coaches leave, they bring a lot of guys with them. The whole 2 transfer thing is always something you got to think about. And I'm sure a lot of these guys could get waivers with them now not being a Power 5 school. So I wouldn't be totally shocked if some guys who transferred twice end up at State. I mean, if you're able to bring a lot of coaches with you, I'm sure you can do the same thing with players and bring the structure with you. So, I mean, I know there was a lot of other names out there linked. Obviously, Mike Elko is one of the big ones. He's now over at A&M. That kind of makes it more sense. Obviously, he was already a D coordinator there.
Yeah.
And that was, where he was at for a long time. Got like his,
Which I was very shocked. Somebody sent me a picture from today, and they had handed out to every single person in the room for the interview his exact contract and every single breakdown of every single dollar because they want to be so transparent because they did it so wrong the last time. Like I know we had a situation where it would have been a lot of money, but at the same time, like they were not very transparent on what was happening, and it seemed like they wanted to just clear it up. It's like I think it was base pay X amount of money, win a conference championship X amount of money, I was like laughing at it because like win a national championship, make a playoff game, make this, and it's like, yeah, I mean that's cool and all, but like I don't think you need to tell everybody in the world that unless the information really needs to come out where it's every single thing broken down. I think if the right coach is there, it shouldn't matter how much they're getting paid if they're winning football games.
Yeah,
I think as long as you can keep a coach.
Yeah, because I think one of the most expensive coaches out there is Bob Stoops, or not Bob Stoops. Is it not Bob? That's his dad.
Mark
Stoops.
At Kentucky.
Yeah, and when you think about it, Kentucky's done nothing for a long time, and now they're doing good. Like, it's just if you find the right guy, you strike gold, you get your area, it works. I mean, like I know Nick Saban's always the outlier where it's like he never recruited in the South, and then boom, Alabama. Like I'm not saying Johnathan Smith.
I would say the key person to take the look at that really did it the right way is Kalen DeBoer. I mean, what they've done at Washington in the last 2 seasons is unbelievable. 1 game away from a college football playoff, and his contract is half of the contract that most of these coaches are. And they did it the right way, and they're going to give him the money that he deserves because he's proving it. You know what I mean? It's kind of a big thing. Another thing I wanted to touch on. This isn't really a huge thing to look at, but it is kind of interesting. So somebody posted the S&P Plus, which is a calculation of offense, defense, special teams overall, of how the seasons have gone. And Michigan State's is 92nd overall this year. And in the last 3 years, Johnathan Smith has taken Oregon State from originally being 109th overall to this year when he finished was 17th overall, which is pretty darn good turnaround. You know what I mean? And with what he had in the conference that he had, because it was considerably arguably the hardest conference in football this year. There were so many good teams, and they were just beating up on each other with 1 or 2 teams coming out on top. But I mean, look, it's a tough place to play there, and he's going to an even tougher place to play in the Big Ten, I would say, because everybody wants to beat the top dogs. So that's going to be a huge thing to see what happens in the next couple years.
Yeah, and obviously another thing is too when these coaches are fired, obviously a lot of people decommit, whether that be from your own team or others. You look at, Colorado is a good example. Colorado's lost, I think, like 2 or 3 quarterbacks the last few days.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like they lost probably 7 players. I mean, we lost 6 so far, but most of them decommitted way back when this all kind of happened. But it's good to see that the group that we still have, a couple players like Nick Marsh, who I actually got to speak to this weekend. He's just excited for his football career going in the future, and I'm very happy for him because the kid, it seems very dedicated to football, and it's cool to talk to him for about 15 minutes. Justin Denson, who already tweeted out that he wants to be the first person to catch a pick 6 in Spartan Stadium next year for the new coach, and like Jalen Thompson and his teammate over there at Riverside. Those are huge players that can make an immediate impact on changing the culture of what it was in the past to where it could be now. That's going to be kind of the important thing to do right off the bat. Take the young guys. I mean, there's already players that are trying to get, trying to say, hey, like this is going to be the place you want to be at, because a lot of places just kind of wait to the last minute and see what they can do. But hey, with the expansion of the conference and everything that's going on, you got to start early and you got to work hard to try to get it and flip it over again, because it's possible. There's very much a middle zone up into the higher tier, or you could potentially, I mean, with the 12-team playoffs, there's a potential that any team you can think of, like Iowa, could make it into the third playoff spot from the Big Ten, just by the way that the scheduling works, because everybody's not playing every big dog and everything. So it's a potential that it could happen in the future.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, kind of like you mentioned, right? There's a very fine line because the conference just got exponentially
Yeah.
harder.
Yeah.
And if you look at Michigan State's current roster, I mean,
Yeah.
what would you even say? They were what,
Yeah.
like
You got
12, maybe?
Yeah, you have to kind of.
So
Yeah, I think there was a fine line between the coaching and the player output, and I think that there was a coaching issue and then a player output, but I would say the coaching issue outweighed it because of the fact that towards the end, I'm pretty sure that like these dudes knew that they were gone. Like it was over, especially in the last week's game. Like we're running the ball on 3rd and 12. Like it didn't seem like we were really trying to do anything fancy, and they didn't even let it like the playbook let it open at all. It kind of just was very vanilla. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. I do like the style of the offense that I heard that they might be bringing. It's kind of like a 49ers offense, which is it's pretty good. Like you said, it's kind of like a Michigan offense, I would say. Run, 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 try to open up the pass and go that way. And hey, players like Nathan Carter, they already said they're commit. He already said he's committed to turning this around. So that's a big deal because he has the potential to get drafted and go somewhere with his career for sure. So
exactly, yeah. Like if you can bring some of that grit over from that Oregon State team, turn it back to the D'Antonio type Spartan years
yeah,
where you get the air quote reject Michigan guys, the guys
yeah,
in state around the Midwest, gritty, understand the area, the region. And, ironically, if you think about it now, I mean, this is what could be the positive of him coming from the West Coast. Is he knows how to beat some of these teams. Like
and
he beat Oregon last year.
yeah,
He's beaten Washington before. He's beaten some of the West Coast team, so he knows how they operate. He can compete with them recruiting wise. Obviously, kids are going to commit to Michigan State because it's Michigan State, like we've
yeah,
seen with a few of the guys now. So I think it could be potentially a positive that he's from the West Coast, and he's been able to put guys in the league at a relatively non-important university. I don't want to
yeah.
totally
I mean,
kill
yeah, I
Oregon
mean,
State, but if they're important, they would be putting in one of these deals. So
yeah. That is the one thing that I think part of the reason that he's here, which I'm very glad is the security and the alignment of having a conference, while also being able to play teams he's played in the past and also recruit in the Pacific Northwest because there isn't as much of a hotbed in the Pacific Northwest as there is the Midwest and the South. But to be able to still have connections over there and try to expand on what you had before, now you're kind of looking at the whole board and saying, hey, we can still recruit there. We're not going to do it as prominent as the Midwest or the Southern region, Kentucky, Virginia. We can kind of expand into that, but at the same time, we could always go back to where we knew and gain some players from 3 or 4 stars from the Pacific Northwest and expand on that a little bit more and try to see what they can do on the East Coast because we have brought in some players from the West and if we can kind of keep a small bit of that while doing a key part, that's part of the reason why I want some of these coaches to like Hawkins. That's one of the key people that I know can recruit well in this area. They're the quarterback, the Brian Wozniak played or coached at Wisconsin, so he's known in the Midwest before. So that's a key part too, as well, to kind of expand on what's happening. So,
yep, for sure. So just didn't want to go too long. I mean, we're already at like 20 something minutes right now. So
yeah,
any other like closing thoughts you had quickly? I'm
just want to
sure we'll
make sure.
address it more on the podcast later this
Yeah,
week.
I just want
What will
to.
happen
I just want to make
until
sure
then.
real quick. Do a quick scroll. Make sure nothing else is happening that is going to be big important deals, but it doesn't look like much is going on. So I think we're good. I'm excited, and it's gonna be awesome to see what kind of product we get for the next year. And one of the first, I mean, the big thing we talked about last year with the whole Urban Meyer rumors or whatever is that we played Ohio State our first home game. Again, like at home or whatever. Oregon's first home game in conference is Michigan State. So it's going to be one that's going to be circled on the board for next year to see what he can do against his former rival. So should be
For sure,
interesting.
yeah. So
So
that's pretty much all we have for now. Overall, I think Jonathan Smith might struggle initially, but I think it's if he gets the time down the road, it'll work.
Yeah.
We'll see. Hopefully, Michigan State gives them time because you see a lot of these guys, they're already trying to run people out of town, and then it gets nuts. But we'll see.
Time is key now.
What?
Time is key.
Yes, for sure.
Time is a
For
very
sure.
important thing. So we'll
'Cause
talk
as we
more on the
always see, people always they change expectations mid-season and it goes
Yeah.
crazy. Like I'm trying to think of a good example this year. I mean, like Florida State, people kind of thought was going to be like a 10-win team. They're now 12-0,
Yeah.
and their quarterback's dead. So it's
Same
like
with
interesting.
same with like Colorado. Everybody thought they were just dead at the beginning, then they started winning, and everybody started freaking out because they started going crazy and winning games, and then they just fell apart again.
And now everyone's like, "Oh, they suck again."
Yeah,
It's
like you got to just give it time. This is a 3. I would say it's a 2 to 3 year plan. Give it 2 to 3 years, and hopefully, you never know. The first year could be above expectations. You never know.
Yep, because I mean that's what we saw with Tucker, right? So
Yeah.
eventually be a regression to the mean,
Yeah.
and you just want to slowly build over time. Like TCU 13 wins to probably like I think 5 or 6 wins.
Yeah.
And then hopefully they can get a little bit better after that, and you can average it out to being like 9 wins. So, yeah, that's all we got for now.
All right.
We'll be
We'll
recording
be back
later
for the
in the week.
pod.
Yeah, exactly. This will be coming out
So.
Monday, and yeah, can't wait to talk to Cozy.
Yeah, have a great one. Oh yeah. All right, have a great one. Go green.
See you guys.